Andrew Weidemann is a man representing the grain producers of Australia, and he joins us now from country Victoria because there is this outrageous threat being put on the barley producers of this country about a potentially an 80% tariff on those Australian goods. Look, they say it's all to do with a long-lasting dispute, but we all know what it's really about. Andrew, what would it mean if there was an 80% tariff put on Australian barley?
Well, look, effectively, Paul, if there was an 80% tariff imposed, as has been intimated by the Chinese government over the weekend, then that would stop the barley trade between Australia and China.
So, effectively completely wipes it out because it's frankly too expensive for the product to compete in the local markets, or it makes it too expensive for you to even put it on a ship and get it out of here?
Look, it makes it too expensive in terms of the actual purchasing price by China back to Australia. Effectively, if an 80% tariff on $200 a tonne barley here in Australia, as an example, the $40 return to the grower wouldn't be enough to make it worthwhile, Paul. So essentially, even a 20% tariff or the like would be enough to stop trade essentially between our two countries, which is unfortunate because a lot of the goodwill that's been built up over the last decade and a half of work that we've done as a grains industry in China, developing with the brewing and malting industry in China, grain varieties here, barley varieties here that we sow and grow, that we sell to the Chinese so they can make the beer that suits their lifestyle and taste in China.
So what sort of percentage does it make up of the Australian market, these barley sales to China? Is it the cream on the crop, or is it the actual cake now?
Look, it's very much the cake, to be honest, at the moment. Greater than half of our export barley in both feed barley and malting barley, and there's two types of barley that we trade currently to China. One is for malting, which is obviously for brewing and making beer, and the other is for feed, and of course that is for feeding animals. And we know that the swine fever outbreak in China probably coincided with the droughts that occurred here. So we haven't had a lot of exportable surplus, particularly on the east coast of Australia, to send there. But in Western Australia, they've had a season 2 years ago that was probably nearly one of the best on record. And then, of course, last year, a rip-roaring drought. So we've got a lot of vagaries in our weather patterns that we have to try and compete with as well. But in terms of China, it's grown over the last decade to be our biggest barley buyer and user of our product.
So how many people would go to the wall if they can't keep selling what they currently do, where they currently do?
Look, in terms of the growers themselves, we would have to look for other markets. We do have the situation here where our grain stocks are extraordinarily low. So we have a small grace period in terms of building stocks, but the long-term advantage here and disadvantage is that we've built up this industry in China, and it'll actually harm internally, we believe, in terms of the Chinese malting industry. It'll actually do harm to themselves. Now, we need strong negotiations between our two governments. We've been talking with our Trade Minister today, Simon Birmingham. We've been talking to other political people and representatives from around Australia as well about barley concerns for growers. There's a lot of high-level meetings occurring at the moment trying to come up with a solution to try and make sure that we maintain the $2 billion industry that we have in barley being exported to China.